Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another Soothkeep live stream. I'm glad to be back in the saddle here in Oklahoma after two almost back-to-back trips. The last one was in Australia. We had a wonderful time in Australia. The believers there were so thankful that we would take our time and go on our own dime and go to Australia and bring the prophetic word to them and bring encouragement to the believers. We especially enjoyed meeting the Aboriginal believers in the Perth area. It was just so amazing and so refreshing to be around them. They had such zeal and fire and hunger in their faith. And, when you listen to the testimonies, when their grandparents were first converted from the Aboriginal systems, they were actually facing potential death. They could have been speared to death or left to fend for themselves. It was a terrible situation, but God gave them all grace. At any rate, I'm back from Australia, had a wonderful time with the believers there. But in 1 week, I am leaving for a 2-week trip to Brazil. So keep me in your prayers. A lot of things going on. Just pray that I'll somehow keep this balance going where I'm getting the work of the Lord done on the different fronts with the traveling, with a YouTube video and live stream ministry, and with the writing ministry, social media ministry. I do want to thank you moderators for all the help that you've been giving to me. It's just been a tremendous blessing. So anyway, tonight we are going to be talking about President Trump and geopolitics. And it's really amazing when you look at the different pies that he has his finger in and how he's influencing world politics in a very big way. I don't think that this is just happenstance. I don't think this is an accident or a freak of nature. I think this is literally the deep state going forwards in a way that's deceiving many people. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that Trump is the Antichrist. Maybe he will be. The proof is going to be in the pudding. But it certainly means that we're seeing America used in a very big way right now, laying the foundation, laying a precedence for the coming one world order. How that plays out ultimately is we're just going to have to watch. But some of the things that have been struck me. Let's just start with Greenland. When Trump was at Davos, he explained to the World Economic Forum why America needs Greenland. And he was very plain, very blunt. We need it for critical minerals, for critical metals, for energy, for national defense, for national security. But he was equally blunt going the other way. Europe and Greenland need America to be Greenland's protector. Denmark, he pointed out some historical facts. I mean, Denmark fell in just a few days to the Germans in World War II. Denmark could not defend itself, much less Greenland, against the incursions of the Russians and the Chinese. Now, I don't think that Trump is trying to pass off the story that Greenland is in danger of a military invasion by China or Russia. Some people misunderstand his words on this matter, and it doesn't help the situation. Trump is legitimately concerned about Russia and China bringing in boatloads of money to develop the mineral resources in Greenland and import a bunch of Russian and Chinese workers to work there. It's Trump's position that we need to get the Chinese out of the Western Hemisphere, get them out of the northern aspects like Canada and Greenland, Iceland, get them out of Central America and Mexico, get them out of South America, get them out of the Western Hemisphere, period. They can go find their own minerals wealth somewhere else, but not in the backyard here. Now, whether you agree with Trump's position on this or not, is beside the point. Whether I agree with it or not is beside the point. This is what's going on. This is what's going down. And we are watching it as watchmen on the walls and trying to figure out how this fits together with Bible prophecy. Now, it would be tremendously problematic if Russia and China got massive footprints in Greenland. Greenland has many, not just a few, many mega deposits of critical rare earth elements, of platinum group metals, of gold, of silver, of energy things like coal and petroleum. It's amazing how much is there. Lithium. There's centuries worth of America's need for critical minerals and metals there. Now, Trump is not likely to invade Greenland by military force. But what he is likely to do is vastly increase America's military footprint there, to expand our current active military footprint there significantly, and take up and reuse some earlier bases from the Korean War era forwards that have been closed, and take up and expand those bases. Now, what's interesting about this is Denmark feels threatened. And in some ways, you can hardly blame her. If you regard Greenland as your territory and someone else wants it as their territory, you would feel threatened. However, ultimately, the drift that I'm gathering as I read what some NATO advisors and military personnel have stated, combined with what Trump is stating, combined with the soft refusals by the EU and by Denmark, implies to me that ultimately Trump is going to get what he wants. Now, he's jokingly talking about making Greenland another state, but I don't believe for a moment that that's what he actually intends. I think what he's intending is the art of the deal. You make a demand up here that you're not actually trying to get, and people respond with, I can't possibly go there, here's my line. And then between those two lines, you work towards a middle, find a compromise. He just wants America to have the rights to militarily defend Greenland, and to economically and technologically exploit the resources that are in Greenland. He's not concerned about America getting them and Europe not getting them. He is concerned about Russia and China getting them, and he ought to be. Ultimately, I think Trump's play here for Greenland is going to expand far beyond Greenland. It's going to cover all of the Arctic. So we'll just have to watch this play out. Now, it's interesting to observe that Denmark has increased her military presence in Greenland. Not sure what the purpose of this is, because it wouldn't matter how many troops you sent there. If Trump wanted to take the place, he would just plain take it. And the whole Danish military, if you put every last one of them there, wouldn't be able to defend Greenland. So I'm not sure what the purpose is. You know, it's kind of a paltry show of force. Germany sent troops there, and within a couple of days sent them back home, turned about face on the situation when Trump threatened Europe with tariffs. Now, so there's not a whole lot more to say here on the Greenland situation, except that we just need to keep watching it. I ultimately suspect that Trump is going to obtain what he wants with Greenland. I suspect that this is going to continue to go forwards. Now, I wasn't going to bring this up because it's not immediately related, but it's related in a broader way, and so I'll just throw it out there. I saw in the news today that Alberta is actually going forwards on a referendum to secede from Canada. They probably don't have enough popular votes in the province to actually succeed if that vote was taken today. But who knows what's going to happen in the future. But there shouldn't have any problem at all getting the 178,000 signatures that they need for this to become on a voting ballot this coming fall. And I suspect that's what's going to happen. So this has gone from just a pipe dream of a handful of people who were regarded as fringe Albertans to a growing minority that could easily become a majority in Alberta who are absolutely tired of Ottawa's leftist, Marxist, liberal government. And they want freedom. And they're right now pushing to be an independent state or an independent nation. And who knows what would happen after that. Well, let's look at what's going on in Iran. It's been painful to many watching this situation to see Trump make such massive threats early on that if blood gets shed by the IRGC, that Trump is going to respond in a massive way. Well, to this point, a very modest estimate of the deaths for the protesters is 20,000. And it could easily be in the 30 to 40,000 range. The pictures that have been sent back of bodies piled up in the hospitals and the morgues and bodies piled up on the streets is really, it's intense. It's almost mind-blowing. Some commentators have claimed that this is essentially Iran's October 7th. And in a way it is. This is wicked terrorists in the government going after their own people who simply want freedom. Now, many major airlines have canceled their flights to the Middle East, Israel included. And we've seen America's CENTCOM commander, Admiral Brad Cooper, has landed in Israel. So there's many things going on that look like we could see this turn into a very desperate situation here in the near future. Is Trump going to actually order a strike on Iran? Well, that remains to be seen. He did promise that he was going to make the Iranians government pay if they shed blood. And now we're 2 weeks plus after serious shedding of blood. It's well over a week since there's complete internet blackout. Nothing has been done by the West, except to encourage Iranians to keep allowing their blood to be shed. But there's a military buildup that is involving B-2 bombers that could be flying from the U.S., a number of other bombers. There's the stealth bombers, the F-35s. We've got F-18s, F-15E Strike Eagles are massing in the Middle East. We have THAAD and Patriot missile batteries there. The UK stands ready with some of her own jets in the region. Israel, of course, we know her capabilities and she stands ready. So who knows if this is going to be America only and Israel watches, or Israel only and America watches, or Israel and America together, or Israel and America and a bunch of European, or at least one or two European nations. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here. The U.S. Abraham Lincoln is now in the area, is within striking distance of Iran, but within the next 24 hours is going to be in ideal striking distance of Iran. We have the USS George H.W. Bush is headed towards Europe. We have, I've heard talk of at least 2 other carrier groups headed in this direction. We have subs in the area which are armed with missiles. We have destroyers which are armed with missiles. If America goes after this in 2 or 3 days, there could be serious devastation to the IRGC and to the Ayatollah and his group, his henchmen. But on top of this, if Israel jumps in the fray, if we get some British and French help, this would be insane devastation. It's not hard to imagine that there would be enough devastation that the patriots in Iran would wake up again, once again, arise and be emboldened, and you would see many in the military, the regular military, not the IRGC, and many in the police turn towards aiding the the population against the IRGC. Now, there's other developments here that are pretty amazing. I mean, I mentioned that airlines like the Lufthansa, KLM, United, and Delta have canceled, at least through this weekend, flights to Israel and the Middle East. We have Russia calling for its citizens to leave immediately, to leave Iran. Other nations have already called for their citizens, if they're in Iran, to leave Iran. And there are rumors right now, mainly being spread by Turkey, of an imminent Israeli strike. So it remains to be seen. Now, we know Trump's pattern. Strike on the weekend, like Friday night, early Saturday morning, so the markets have a time to digest the information and cool off and have a level head when the markets open again Monday morning. If he's going to strike, I wouldn't be surprised if he does strike in a Friday evening or an early Saturday morning. And he may strike this weekend, it may be next weekend, but we'll see. I don't think it's a guarantee that or a shoe-in that Trump is going to strike. He does have a lot of pressure coming from the Arab nations to not strike. And there's been some pressure from Israel to not strike unless America is sure that they can do the job right. Israel doesn't want to get hammered by a launch of missiles from Iran. So probably whatever, if we're going to do something, if America is going to do something, it would be in a very big way that would first take out Iran's air defense systems, take out her radar and early warning systems, take out her missile launch systems capable of doing devastation in Europe and Israel and American allies like Saudi Arabia, take care of the situation, and then go after the IRGC and Ayatollah headquarters and military outposts and the henchmen that are associated with Ayatollah. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here with Iran. Now, how about Venezuela? I find this situation very, very interesting. Of course, it was stated to be an operation focused primarily on drugs. But this was just cover, folks. Now, it wasn't a lie, because America really is serious about the drug war. And it's not going to begin and end with Venezuela. America, when she's finished dealing with what she's dealing right now in the Middle East and gets this done, gets this Gaza thing going forwards, and gets the Iran situation addressed, you can bank on it that she's going to again focus strongly on two things: the minerals in the north, the energy in the north, and the drug war in Mexico, Central America, and South America. And he's going to have victory of the same magnitude, at least I foresee that he had with Venezuela. Now, the operation in Venezuela was called Operation Absolute Resolve. And it was an amazing effort here, folks. Venezuela was protected by the latest and greatest Russian anti-aircraft equipment, the missile systems, was equipped with early warning systems. Somehow, America shut them all down. Russia's best technology to defeat helicopters and jets and planes failed completely. It was shut down. Now, we had over 150 aircraft involved there, including helicopters that delivered the Delta Force operators. And we had one-way attack drones that we used, which took out things like antennas, uh, communication installations, and military installations. We used glide bombs. We used a lot of cool weapons. And you probably heard that they used a secret sonic wave or microwave weapon. I've read various opinions on what this was. Nobody really knows for sure. We're all dealing with a little bit of speculation, but whatever it was very high tech and it was super cool. Now, it wasn't super cool to those that had this weapon directed at them. They were immediately hammered with brain fog, with massive headaches, with nosebleeds, blood coming out of their eyes, blood coming out of their mouth. They were incapacitated. They could hardly walk. They were disoriented. And it took a long time for them to recover. Some of them, even the next day, still felt their bodies still felt out of whack. Well, they took a huge hit to their central nervous system, folks. In this battle, it's estimated that over 100 enemy combatants were taken out. They were killed, including 30, 40, 50 Cuban bodyguards that were the presidential guard. They were elite. We captured Maduro and his wife. We took them to the States. And in a sense, now America is really calling the shots for Venezuela. Now, if Venezuela submits to the American policies here, is willing to make a clean break from the drug trade and go back to an honest living with oil, it would be very good for Venezuela. If the Venezuelan government refuses this, it's going to get very ugly because we fought with our gloves on when we went into Venezuela. Venezuela does not want to see America there with the gloves off. And what's also interesting here is the vast majority of the Venezuelans, the expatriates or the expats and those that were in Venezuela, the vast majority were extremely excited that America came to their rescue and delivered them from Maduro. They were tired of his heavy-handed Marxist-style government, which was bankrupting the nation and destroying the potential to be a country with the first world standard of living because of their vast mineral and energy resources. So Venezuela, folks, is just the tip of the iceberg. You can see this play out in the future, the next couple of years. I think we'll see it play out in Mexico, Central America, and other South American states where America is going to put a stop to the drug war, to the drug trade, to crooked government there, and also deal with keeping the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, the North Koreans, and everybody else out of our backyard. And even though, yes, these nations have a right to have whomsoever they will there, and yet you've got to take into consideration the world we live in. If the Roman Empire says that you're going to jump, then you better jump or you're going to get crushed. And if America says you're going to jump, you better jump or you're going to get crushed. And the fact of the matter is, these nations, I think, will have a better standard of living and more freedom under American hegemony, which is really what it's going to be, rather than a Russian-dominated or Chinese-dominated Marxist defilement. So the man on the street is going to be much happier with the new paradigm rather than the old paradigm. And whether you or I like it, this is where things are going. This is what we're watching happening, and we're just seeing this get started. Well, let's move on to Gaza and the Board of Peace. This is another very exciting story that Trump has his hand in. Now, the official signing for the Board of Peace just happened at Davos. And in my estimation, this Board of Peace is a de facto effort to undermine and eventually replace the UN. Trump hates the UN hates Trump. The UN is a bunch of leftist knotheads and mediocres who probably couldn't hold down a real CEO job anywhere. And so they have a government patsy job. Trump wants to bring real leadership into this organization. And Gaza is just a starting point. This is going to spread to the Middle East. And I think it's probably going to spread much farther than the Middle East. Now, there are some downsides to watching this. And maybe you've seen the same things that I've seen. But when you have nations like Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan, Jordan, and Egypt signing on, all nations that are either somewhat or absolutely opposed to Israel. It's not a good look. And you have nations like France, the UK, Spain, and Scandinavian countries refusing to join. And then you have Trump snubbing Canada because of Corning. This is also a problematic look. Going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, some of the states that have refused to join have told us why they're refusing to join. They're not going to join until Palestine is invited. Now, don't you think this is interesting? We have European nations refusing to join until Palestine is admitted. But you've got Arab nations like Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan, Jordan, Egypt signing on even though Palestine is not there. This is very interesting. Why are these nations not very concerned about Palestine? Because Palestine is a thorn in their flesh. They're willing to take up Palestine as a political cudgel if they need to be, but they really don't care about Palestine. The Palestinians are not really well appreciated in the Middle East. Nobody wants them in their nation. Egypt doesn't want them. Jordan doesn't want them. Pakistan doesn't want them. Qatar doesn't want them. Saudi Arabia doesn't want them. They all have enough problems of their own. They don't need the Palestinians to come up and create an uproar. This is why the Palestinians are forced to find refuge in warm, open arms from libtards here in America in the universities who somehow live in this fantasy world where you can have the LGBTQ movement and Islam holding hands. Folks, this is a pipe dream. If you believe that that's a reality, you need to get your head examined. Now, in fact, you need to go to Walmart next time brains are on sale and go buy yourself a brain. Because if and when Islam comes to power in any country, one of the first things that happens is everybody that's bisexual or homosexual is executed. All the libtards are executed. The only thing that's tolerated is conversion to jihadist Islam. Sharia law keeping Islam. You're not going to go there. You're not welcome. So you can wear your keffiyehs now, and you can chant slogans now, and carry the Palestinian flag now, and at the same time flaunt your LGBTQ stuff. But if Islam ever comes to power in America, your blood is going to cover the streets. I don't know how you can live in such a pipe dream. Well, anyway, let's go back to Gaza in the Board of Peace. What this boils down to is the global cabal getting a massive footprint in Gaza. a massive footprint in Gaza. I should say that again, a massive footprint in Israel. This is laying a precedent. This is laying a foundation, a principle, which is going to be exploited in the future for the Antichrist to be in Israel. Now, let's start tying these pieces together, because we've talked about Greenland, we've talked about Iran, we've talked about Venezuela, we've talked about Gaza and the border peace. How do all these pieces fit together, and how does Trump fit them all together? Well, what we have going here on the geopolitical scheme with Greenland and Venezuela, we are talking about one of or the other of the variations of the world being divided up into 10 nation states, where you have 10 regions headed by a king, and each of these regions is literally ruled. It's composed of many countries, but ruled by one man, one emperor. Each of these is a small empire. Altogether, they compose a massive empire ruled by the Antichrist. Now, what we have going here is America is obviously dominating in the Western Hemisphere. I recently saw a map, and maybe some of you have seen it. I forget which version of the 10-state map it is, but this map had America and Greenland and Iceland and Canada, Mexico, Central America, and also the Caribbean, and Colombia and Venezuela. And then the rest of South America was another region. So I think this is what we're seeing in play. Now, we don't know which form is actually going to come to pass. We don't know which of these maps is actually going to be the final map. And maybe the final map hasn't actually been executed yet. These are all just conjectures and desires that have been put forth by the globalists. And that doesn't mean that any one of them is necessarily going to be the one. They might combine several different maps into a new map. At any rate, this is where this stuff is going. And Trump is leading the way for this brand of globalism. Now, a lot of people get confused here, folks. I don't know how many times I've heard Christians insist, but Trump is not a globalist. Folks, Trump is a globalist. He hates leftist, libtard, Marxist globalism. He hates it with a passion. And he and his fellows who have at least half a head of common sense destroyed libtardism at Davos. Absolutely destroyed it. But they're not opposed to globalism. They want globalism, folks. They just want globalism that at bare minimum is capitalistic and probably going to be slowly drifting leftward morally. It'll be capitalistic, economically, politically, militarily, conservative. Now, I think the principle with Trump's push for Greenland is not going to stop with Greenland. I think we're going to see this continue to go in the direction of one of these 10 region maps. Now, here's another thing I want to say about the 10 regions. I want to say it now instead of later because I don't want to forget about talking about it. I have never, ever, that I can remember, unless it was when I was a babe in the Lord and green behind the ears. So for at least 35 years, I have never believed that the UN was going to divide the world up into 10 regions. I thought back then the UN was a piece of garbage. It's worthless. It's powerless. It's gutless. It's libtardism. All it can do is cheat and lie and steal and funnel funds into places that shouldn't be going. I think the UN should be disbanded, dismantled, kicked to the curb and the building either repurposed or torn down. There's no reason for America to fund the UN. Personally, I think that the restored Roman Empire is going to dominate the world, and the restored Roman Empire is going to divide the world into 10 regions. And I wouldn't be surprised if this trumps Gaza plan with Trump's Board of Peace. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a key critical piece of this coming one world dictatorship. Just watch these trends, see where they go. Now, when we look at Venezuela, this is the same thing. In some of these maps, it includes not just Mexico and Central America, it includes a couple of the nations at the north end of South America, like Colombia and Venezuela. So from Greenland to Venezuela, it's like the outermost outposts of this map, and then they're going to work in. Just watch this play out, folks. It may not play out the way I think it's going to play out, but just watch it. It might play out the way you think it's going to play out, which is not quite the way I think it's going to play out. But however it plays out, it's going to play out in a very big way. It's going to play out towards the 10 region states, one way or the other. And America is going to dominate her region. She's going to be the dominant force in one of these 10 regions. There's no doubt at all in my mind. Now, when we look at what's went on in Venezuela, you can rest assured that this is going to spread. This wasn't a one and done thing. The war on drugs is not over. The war on siphoning, excuse me here. The war on siphoning funds, pilfering funds, buying off governments. The war on getting funds over to terrorist organizations in the Middle East, where you have collusion between China, Russia, Iran, terrorist organizations, and the criminal drug gangs. They're all in collusion together. This war is going to keep going forwards. Now, finally, we come to Iran. And this is still in this big picture of Trump's influence. Iran is a thorn in the flesh for what Trump wants to do in the Middle East. It's a thorn in the flesh for what Europe wants to do in the Middle East. Iran is going to have to be addressed. Now, personally, I suspect if we do deal with Iran, I think what we're going to see is not Iran becoming a really strong American ally. I think what we're going to see is Iran switching to a more moderate government and becoming something more along the lines of a Turkey, which is a secular government rather than a religious government. And it's not a nation of Sharia law or anything that resembles it. There's a lot of freedom there. But this is the direction I think we're going to see Iran go, where she's still going to be Islamic. She's still going to be going down that path. And ultimately, she will be a Shia version of Turkey. That's what I anticipate that we're going to see. Well, anyways, I've covered a lot of ground here tonight. I probably should bring up a few more things tying all this together. But we're looking at America exerting domination in the world. And I know that it's a very popular position today, and it's been ever since I was a babe in the Lord in the early 80s, a popular position to insist that America is not found in Bible prophecy. I have never believed that. Now, the main argument that America is not found in Bible prophecy is the argument that America is not mentioned in Bible prophecy. And I think we need to put a little clarification on this subject. If you say that America is not mentioned in Bible prophecy, Are you saying she's not mentioned by name in Bible prophecy? Or are you saying she's not mentioned by description in Bible prophecy? So let's start with she's not mentioned by name. Yeah, you're right. America's not mentioned by name anywhere in the Bible. But how in the world is this an argument? Why don't you show me in the Bible where the Roman Empire is mentioned by name in a prophetic passage that pertains to the last days? You won't find it. The Roman Empire is described in Daniel, not named. The Roman Empire is described in Revelation. It is not named. The Roman Empire is described in several other places in Scripture pertaining to the last days, but she's not named. So if an argument from silence that America is not named in Bible prophecy means America is not in Bible prophecy, you're going to be consistent with your arguments, folks. You're going to have to say the Roman Empire is not in Bible prophecy because she's not named. But if you're not willing to go that route and say, well, then the Roman Empire is not in Bible prophecy, then if you're going to be consistent, you have to say, well, if Rome can be in the Bible prophecy, though she's not named, then America can be in Bible prophecy, though she's not named. Whichever way you go, folks, you have to be consistent. It is completely bankrupting the historical grammatical hermeneutic if you're not consistent with your interpretative methods. Now, personally, I've long believed that America is going to be part of an expanded Roman Empire of the last days. That's not proof that she's going to be the tail, or proof that she's going to be part of the body, or proof that she's going to be the head, or even the little horn. But simply, just in principle, she's going to be part of the Roman Empire. Now, why in the world, folks, would the global cabal find it to their advantage to somehow pull the plug in America and completely bankrupt her and destroy her so she doesn't exist? Wouldn't it be wiser to somehow come on from the inside and take over America from the inside while maintaining her economic, industrial clout and maintaining her technological edge and maintaining her military edge? I think it'd be tremendously to the advantage of the global cabal to put a saddle on this great beast and ride it hard than to destroy it. Just my opinion. But I think if we look at the trajectory of what we're seeing right now, looking at the trajectory that we see with America, we do not see a nation imploding. We do not see a nation in danger of economic collapse. I've been listening to this economic collapse garbage for 40 years, folks. I've been laughing at it for 40 years. Mostly I've been laughing in secret, and I think I'm just going to start laughing in public. I'm just tired of playing this game. If you can look at America's debt and think that America is in danger of bankruptcy, just going complete belly up, you don't understand the World Bank. You don't understand America's debt. You don't understand how this game is played. All you're looking at is numbers and wondering how in the world America can pay off a $20 trillion debt. Folks, America does not have to pay off a $20 trillion debt. All she has to do is tell those knotheads she's not going to pay them back. And if they don't want to get paid back, then we'll go to war. It's not a real debt in the way that we're used to thinking of debt. A real debt is if you don't pay your mortgage on your house, the bank can take your mortgage from you. Now, how this deep state stuff works is these world banks and these treasury departments and every other institution that's involved in this, they loan money, not expecting to be paid back. They loan money, demanding loyalty to the system. That's the game that's being played. Almost never is this money demanded back. America has nations that owe us money from World War I and World War II and from the Korean War era, and billions of dollars of debt ever since then that we've given out, and we've never been paid back. And we don't expect to be paid back. And when America prints money because of the Federal Reserve, we're just printing money every year, expanding the money supply. And when we do this, and then we issue debt, which other people buy, bonds, and we go deeper and deeper into debt this way. If China comes to us and says we want our $2 trillion in debt to be purchased back right now, America's under no obligation whatsoever to buy that debt back. Now, if you think she is, it's because you're living by a Christian reality. Folks, the world doesn't live in Christian reality. The world lives in its own ungodly reality. And they make the rules as they go. Personally, I think this debt isn't designed to destroy nations. It's designed to control them. And if the global cabal, if the deep state players want a nation to go under, they probably have the ability to do so. But why would you take the fastest horse in your stable, the strongest horse in your stable, and not ride it to victory? That's brain dead. Why would you take the fastest horse, the one guaranteed to win the Kentucky Derby, and shoot that horse, and then go pick randomly a horse which may or may not win, when you shot the horse that was guaranteed to win? Why don't you start thinking down this path when it comes to what's going on in the world? Now, personally, I think America is going to be an extremely powerful player in the future. I personally think that she's a legitimate candidate for the little horn that was going to dominate the restored Roman Empire. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm right. It just means I'm looking at the current trajectory that I've been following for 4 decades, and people keep saying it's going to collapse, and it just keeps climbing. Our military technology edge keeps getting bigger. Despite the fear that China's ahead of us, she's not that close. She doesn't have air power. She doesn't have sea power. Certainly not anything that can match America. This trajectory is looking like America is going to dominate the world. Now, this trajectory can be broken, folks. I'm just saying, keep your eye on the trajectory. Weigh this as a possibility. Don't get married to any trajectory. Don't get married to any of your discernment. Don't get married to any way you connect the dots, folks. But if it's a reasonable dot connecting, if it's a reasonable trajectory, hold it loosely, but regard it as a legitimate possibility. My friends could be right. America could implode. America could get nuked by Russia and China in a surprise attack, turned into a glass pile. Some other thing could happen. Maybe we get rocked by an absolutely massive comet that comes down from heaven and fractures into 5 pieces and destroys the West Coast and the East Coast, and Texas and Florida, and just obliterates the country. I mean, things could happen. But unless something mega happens that breaks this trajectory, folks, this trajectory is going to continue to dominate. And this is why I regard America is a candidate for the little horn. Well, anyway, that's all I'm going to say on this tonight. Maybe I should uh, talk more on this subject of America in the future. I do have some friends from Australia who've asked me to address the whole question of America and Babylon. I have taught it in the past, but it's probably time to deal with the subject once again. If you'd like to see more teaching on America and Babylon, like see this as a live stream in the near future, please send some thumbs up or some comments on it that the moderators can see, and then we can take that subject up. So at this point, I have finished my short introductory talk here. We're closing shop at 55 minutes, and let's move on to the Q&A. Okay, so we have a bunch of questions. We're going to start with a few that came in the last few days that came in early, and then we're going to move on to the ones that you guys forwarded to the moderators here tonight. So let's start with the first question. Do you think the minions of Satan can read minds? If so, what biblical evidence do we have? I don't think that the fallen ones have the ability to read minds in the omnipresent way that God does, in the omniscient way that God does. They have 6,000 years of reading your emotions, your feelings, your facial expressions, of your words. So if you're ogling a man or a woman, they can see that, and they're not stupid. If you're muttering as you're watching a libtard on TV, or muttering when you're watching a conservative on TV, they can see that. They're not stupid. I think they probably have some limited ability to work with your mind. I think they have some ability to manipulate your mind by dropping a thought bomb in your mind out of nowhere, but are exploiting a thought and setting it on fire, but it's only very limited. And these powers, folks, can easily be overthrown by the believer submitting himself to God and resisting the devil, and the devil will flee. I want you, in your spiritual warfare, to embrace the fact that he that is in you is a million, billion, trillion times stronger than he that is in the world. Don't think of this spiritual warfare like you got God and the devil in a tug of war. There is no such tug of war. The tug of war is you in your own strength trying to have a tug of war with the fallen spirits. But once you turn the rope over to Jesus, the battle's over. Think of it that way. And yes, believers are able to be protected by the Holy Spirit. Now, I'm not familiar with this advanced sensor that can see people's dreams. I'd be interested if someone has a link to that, please send that to one of the moderators, or because if you send it to a moderator, they can drop the link in the right room here on in our chat room here. Otherwise, if you send me an email, I don't catch all my emails. A lot of them fall through the cracks. I try and answer them all, but it's and my wife ends up answering a lot of them, but it's impossible for me to answer them all. So if you send the link to a moderator, it will definitely get to me, and I will take a look at it. Okay, I wonder what mystery John was not allowed to write about. What did the seven thunders say? Any idea? Well, the only thing I can say on this is I think that if we look at the pattern from the seals and the trumpets and the bowls, we see that the seals were more providential. They were kind of like their own thing. It's the same kind of stuff we're used to, except on steroids. It's a much greater degree. War, like empire builders, but on a level the world's never seen with the Antichrist. The second seal's war. We've seen a lot of war in the past, but now we have war at a level we've never seen war before on planet Earth. We have famine. We've had famine forever, but now we have famine on a level the world has never seen. And then we have the beasts of the earth and the sword and pestilence and things like this, which we've had from time immemorial, but now we have it at a level the world has never seen. When we come to the trumpets, we start seeing stuff that the world has not seen for many, many centuries, maybe ever, right? And it happened under the trumpets. We got like 1/3 of the sea turned to blood, that kind of stuff. When we come to the bowls, it's all the sea turned to blood. So I think that what we're dealing with the thunders is somewhere in between the trumpets and the bowls. The trumpets are 1/3 stuff. The bowls are going to be 2/3 stuff, or the thunders will be 2/3, and the bowls will be 3/3 or 100%. Francis here from Nova Scotia. What do you think of the Canada pivot to China in the New World Order comment by Carney? The current policy up here seems to hate Trump. Well, this kind of nonsense, I think, could very well lead to provinces like Alberta leaving the Union. I think Albertans in general are incensed with the libtardism of Canada, especially of the East. They want their freedom. They want the Canada they once knew. And this isn't a protest anymore. This is not a protest movement. This isn't a fringe movement where people putting up dreamy, wishful thinking posts on social media about, oh, I wish Canada could belong to the U.S. Oh, I wish or I wish at least our province could belong to the U.S. Or maybe at least our province would declare independence. This has gone to the point where Albertans are literally gathering signatures. They need I think it's 178,000 signatures. They get 178,000 signatures. Then by law, there will be a vote this coming fall on whether Alberta should secede from Canada or not. Right now, if the vote was today, I don't think they would have enough. I think we're maybe looking at 20 to 30% of Albertans are in favor of seceding. But if this China nonsense, libtard nonsense keeps going on, I think you could quickly see this in a few months explode to 50, 60% of the Albertans to a point where they would win this referendum and secede from the nation. And I don't think there's anything Canada could do about it unless they declared war on Alberta. And then I think there would be other provinces siding with Alberta. And I wouldn't be surprised if America sided with Alberta. So the East definitely hates Trump. The libtards hate Trump. But I think many in the Western provinces either view Trump kind of neutrally or they like him. And they definitely like the freedom that Trump represents. How do you see China coming to the point of agreeing to subject themselves to Antichrist authority? Probably only after they get their butt kicked. what about people who have never ever heard the gospel? Will they be spared from the lake of fire? Will they be at the great white throne? Nobody is going to be in hell merely because they didn't hear the gospel. Men are not going to be thrown into hell for light that they were not given, but they will be in hell for the light that they have rejected. If they have rejected the light of nature, like the evidence from nature, from the stars, from the sun, from the moon, from creation around them, that there is a divine creator, a powerful almighty God, if they reject that, that's why they're going to go to hell. If they've been given the light of the ancient patriarchal religion and they still have a few vestiges left in their part of the world and they reject that, they're going to go to hell. If they have the light of the Old Testament that was given by God to the Jews and they twist it and make religion out of it and they reject its real message, they're on the road to hell. If you take the New Testament that's given to the church and you twist that and turn it into Roman Catholicism so that you're rejecting the message of the Bible and inventing your own, you're on the road to hell. People are going to hell for the light that they rejected. And if you're an unbeliever, if you die in your unbelief, you will not escape the lake of fire. You're not going to escape the great white throne judgment. So there's a question here on Jeremiah 49:36 through 39. The Iran was built on a foundation laid by Elam. So Elam is Persia or Iran. Well, there's a lot of prophecy teachers today who hold that these prophecies of Elam are for the future and they're not yet fulfilled. I'm not convinced of that. I'm inclined to think that the Elam prophecies were fulfilled in history with the destruction of Elam, and the fragments were absorbed into the Iranian Empire. But it's not a hill I would die on. Hopefully, it's not a hill that those who think it's a prophecy for the future, hopefully, it's not a hill for them to die on. We got enough really important issues in dispensationalism to die on, and I'm not going to die on the Elam issue. Okay. So here's what we call question number 5. Have you heard about President Trump's Board of Peace to be enacted one day soon? Yes. What's interesting about it is it's already the document's already been signed. They're going to be going in the next few weeks, next few months through the formal steps of getting this thing rolling. Israel does have a problem with the Board of Peace. They've been invited to partake. They do have a problem with it. That problem is this whole question of whether Palestine will be a part of it or not. Think about it from Israel's position. Why in the world would Israel be interested in having Palestine here when Palestine's position is a one-state solution in which Israel does not exist? If Israel could get a peaceful two-state solution with Palestine, she would. But folks, this has never been the position of Palestine as a rule. The Palestine has a one-state position where Israel is extinct. They're not merely asking for a chunk of territory. They're asking that Israel no longer exists. And this is why Netanyahu is against it. Do you think the U.S. is going contrary to God's word where he sets up the borders of the earth and they appear to want to break the borders up like the borders of Greenland? But here's something interesting that you need to understand. It's a principle in scripture that we see in Genesis that Japheth is going to dwell in the tents of Shem. This has historically played out. The Japhetic nations dominated North and South America, despite the fact that people of Semitic extract were here first. And then we have uh, the Middle East. The Japhetic peoples been dominating it from the Greek Empire through the Roman Empire. We have Greenland. The tribal peoples that live there, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they have Semitic bloodlines, if you were to trace it historically, and mingled with like Scandinavian bloodlines. And these peoples are now dominated by the fractured Roman Empire from the Danes, the Denmark. So actually, I take that back. Denmark, like Germany, was not part of the Roman Empire because the Rhine River was the border. So it was France, and to the west and south of France was the Roman Empire. But this is still the Roman Empire attempting to dominate things, whether it's the modern EU expanded version of it, or whether we're going to look at a legitimate expansion of the Roman Empire dominating it. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. In and of itself, God has appointed the borders of the nations, but he's also appointed the empires of the times of the Gentiles who obliterate borders and then make their own borders. The Babylonian Empire obliterated borders and moved borders. The Medo-Persian Empire obliterated borders and established borders. The Greek Empire obliterated borders and established borders. The Roman Empire obliterated borders and established borders. And the nations of the divided Roman Empire have obliterated borders and established borders, and oftentimes arbitrarily. The borders in the Middle East and Africa were arbitrarily established, not according to the peoples that were there, but according to the whims and fancies of the fractured Roman Empire. So, you have the divine principle of God establishing boundaries, but you also have the divine principle of God ordaining empires that do as they please. If Trump cares so much about the drugs killing Americans, then he should attack China. Fentanyl is the killer. This shows me Trump doesn't care about the drug problem in the U.S. Well, if Trump turned all of China into a glass pile, it would put a dent in the drug trade, but it would not stop the drug trade. It would just stop China's hand in it. Now, I think Trump's first goal is to deal with the drug problem in the Western Hemisphere by getting the Chinese out of here, not allowing the Chinese to be involved in military relationships with South American nations, in port control and port authority situations, in airport and factory situations, getting the Chinese out. You get the Chinese out, then you keep the Chinese from being able to influence the Western Hemisphere. He's going to go after the drug gangs. I wouldn't be surprised if he used our special operations soldiers to go after the drug gangs. Delta, the Navy SEALs, the Rangers, Green Berets, whatever you have, he's going to use them to go after them. Trump may not care about the drug problem as much as you think he should or that I think he should. But I think there is a strong degree of sincerity about this, a degree of sincerity that we haven't seen in the past. And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump goes in the next year or two, really goes berserk over the drug stuff. Lee, do you think this geopolitical convergence is expediting Israel's ability to live in peace without walls or gates? I do. I think that what we're seeing right now with Iran, what we're seeing have seen with Gaza, what we're seeing with Hezbollah, or what we're seeing with the whole region, even Syria, is bringing Israel to a point where the immediate threat of uh, fundamentalist organizations, independent of governments, are threatening Israel, and Israel's only going to be dealing with actual nations like Syria. Now, Syria's army is largely composed of ISIS and Al Qaeda and other factions that are anti Israel, but it's under the control of a relatively strong government. And I think this is going to bring about a relative degree of peace, a faux peace, mind you, but Israel's going to live in this faux peace without walls or gates. And that's where we're going right now. This will set the stage for Gog and Magog for Ezekiel 38 and 39. And by the way, I don't think this means that Israel lives in peace in the sense that she doesn't need her armies and she doesn't need gates or walls. I think what this is talking about is that we're in the modern era. Israel's defenses, no nation's defenses is walls and gates. Nations' defenses are now military. So I think this is more just a prophetic statement that this is going to be in the advanced future, because Israel's able to maintain her security and her peace with a standing army and high-tech weaponry. She doesn't need walls or gates. So we're seeing both aspects of this. We're seeing the high-tech future where Israel can defend her security without walls and gates, and we're also seeing the geopolitical situation set up so that her immediate enemies are being crushed or hindered, or at least bribed into peace. What do you say to some who are so-called prophecy watchmen who say that Trump is just an actor who follows a script provided by the cabal? Folks, this is a matter of discernment. And I want to encourage us to have your ideas on your discernment, to connect the dots the way you think that you should be connecting them. That's fine. But when you connect the dots, when you come to your position of discernment, don't get married to your discernment. Hold your dot connecting loosely. Hold your discernment loosely. So if you get further light, you can modify your direction or you can reverse your direction. Otherwise, you're going to do a nosedive or a belly flop. Now, so we have this opinion of Trump. Some are out there saying that Trump is clearly an antichrist. And other people say, you're a knothead. Trump's not the antichrist. Trump, he might be laying the foundation for the antichrist, but he's not the antichrist. And others are saying similar things. Are saying Trump is just an actor. He's not independent at all, any way, shape, or form. He's following a script provided by a global cabal. Well, these are all positions of discernment. They're positions of dot connecting. They may be right, they may be wrong, they might be some mixture of right and wrong. They might be going in the right general direction, they might be going in the wrong general direction. But they're all considerations looking at the information that have some degree of legitimacy to at least consider it and weigh it against the developing body of objective evidences. Now, personally, I do not believe that Trump is merely an actor, that he's like a marionette and you got people who are playing the marionette. Okay, kick your right leg. Okay, kick your right leg. Okay, wave your hand to the public. Okay, make a muscle, flex your muscle. No, that's not how this works. You have all these deep state players who have been angling folks to bring about a new world order for many, many centuries. Many of these deep state organizations started in Europe. And they stated in their own writings that they were raising up a new world composed of all the European peoples because you couldn't bring a new world order together in Europe. It wouldn't work. No nation in Europe could rise up and then all the other nations would follow them. It just doesn't work. But if you have a mingling of all the European nations in the New World, and the New World rises up to be the leader, then Europe can follow. I think this is what we're dealing with. Now, when we go down this path, you've got all these different entities on the deep state level, on the global cabal level, even on the level of the Illuminati Nephilimic people that are not fully human. There isn't a group of people that are calling all the shots, not a group of 10, not a group of 20, not a group of 50. There's literally hundreds and thousands of them, and they don't all have the same vision. Now, eventually, these visions they're all going to be coming together bigger and stronger as they kind of come together, and they all make compromises, and they're going to come together on a global position. And this is where this Antichrist is going to roll out of this. But right now, folks, Trump is a mixture of a couple different globalist versions. A conservative American version of the global one worldism, globalism. A technocrat version of globalism. His own ideas of globalism. He's independent enough that he intimidates many of the globalists. He doesn't intimidate all of them because some of them are his allies. Right now, this is a king of the hill for who's going to dominate the world. Now, ultimately, we know from the Bible that it appears that some version of a mixture of the reconstituted Roman Empire and the little horn, whoever that is, and the technocrats are all going to come together and dominate the world. It's going to be some combination of America and Europe and maybe a few other colonies of the fractured Roman Empire. I mean, Canada, Australia. This is going to dominate the world. And I don't think it's right to come out and say dogmatically that I know for absolute certain that Trump is Antichrist. I don't think it's right to come out and dogmatically say that Trump's an actor following a script. He's just a marionette. Both of these are a little bit on the extreme side, folks. Just watch the trend. Watch the trend develop. Be cautious as you watch the trend develop. Be cautious as you make your predictions about where the trend is going to go. But there's a few things that are super obvious. Right now, it's super obvious that America is on a trend to dominate Europe and to dominate her Western hemisphere and ultimately to dominate the world. And if that trend is not broken, it's going to continue. And if the trend is broken, it won't continue. This is so obvious you can't miss it. Don't get married to either one of these ideas. Just hold both of them and watch stuff happen. So that if you're holding them loosely and you see more and more conformity with one view or the other to Bible prophecy, you're able to adjust. Trump's definitely not merely an actor who's only following a script. He's got his own independent mind, and he's making his own globalist decisions. It's America first, and his own version of globalism. And some of this, he's merely a puppet being used not by deep state people so much. I think he's being used by demonic powers. But There's a script in a more general sense where you've got all these different competing versions of globalism, and he's following different pieces of this according to what he wants. So that's what's going down. Do you think the Board of Peace is the framework for the 10 kings to come in the tribulation? I couldn't say for certain that it is. I think it's definitely in the trajectory of that direction. This might fall apart, get replaced by something else. This might actually gel, get a solid foundation, and be modified a little bit as years go on, with some people coming in and some being booted. But I think this is definitely in the trajectory. Just like we have a lot of technology that's in the trajectory of the mark of the beast, a lot of technology right now that's in the trajectory of the global currency that's coming. So this is in the trajectory of the 10 kings. It might be a dry run. It might be a stepping stone. It might be the thing itself. And I don't know how I could know for sure. I don't know how anyone could know for sure. If America proves to be the little horn, do you think we will take credit for Ezekiel 38 and 39? Whoever the little horn is, they will take credit for it, I'm sure. The little horn is both the nation and the ruler of the nation. So it's the nation of the Antichrist and the Antichrist who rules over that nation, who takes control of the world. That man is definitely going to take credit for Ezekiel 38 and 39 and claim that he engineered Israel's deliverance. And I think that's going to help him win them over so that he can throw them the bone of building the temple, and that they will embrace him as their Messiah. What role do you think the Pope will play in the future? I am not going to be a bit surprised if the Pope ends up becoming the head of the one world religion. I don't know who else it could be. No other religious figure on earth is as dominant in their sphere as the Pope is in his. And we're seeing at play right now where Protestants and evangelicals are starting to look to the Pope. And as we see the division between true biblical Christianity and Babylonianized Christianity get bigger and bigger, you're going to see a higher percentage of lip service evangelicals embrace the Pope. And I think we're going to see the Pope embrace a libtard gospel. It's just going to happen. So some people in historic reform thinking thought the Pope was the Antichrist, and some dispensationalists have been influenced by that. The Pope is an Antichrist. He's not the Antichrist. He doesn't meet enough of the Antichrist distinctives to be the Antichrist. But he will help consolidate all the world's religions. And I think once the rapture of the church happens, and the world is absolutely terrified by this event, I think we're going to see the world's religions come together because they're going to feel threatened by the alien invasion. And they're going to unify like the world's never unified before. I think you're going to see more ecumenism happen in 2 or 3 years than you'd seen the past 2 centuries. It'll go lickety split. Lee, do you think there was a correlation between natural disasters here in the U.S. and how we treat Israel, like the division of their land? I think there's potentially a minor correlation there. I would be cautious about making a major correlation with nature and whether a nation receives or rejects Israel. If you look back at the history of the world, many of the greatest natural disasters in the history of the world happened for factors other than the nation embracing or rejecting Israel. However, you can't get around the fact that the Bible does clearly teach that there is a cost for dividing the land of Israel. Nations that have been involved in the dividing of the nation of Israel, whether directly or indirectly, have had to pay a price. Some of that price has been in the governmental realm, the economic realm, and sometimes I think you'll at least see patterns that might suggest in the natural realm. God can do as he pleases. Certainly, there's going to be eternal cost to pay if nations divide Israel. And when you see Gog and Magog come against Israel, there's a massive price to pay, fire from heaven. When you see the nations get together at Armageddon to conquer and destroy Israel, there's a massive price to pay that falls from heaven. Babylon the Great boasts, I am no widow. What does this mean? The spiritual implication here is that she's not estranged from her husband. For any Babylonian religion on earth, whether Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Catholicism, Orthodox Christianity, I say that with air quotes, they can boast, I am no widow. They can boast that they're actually married in a sense in their religion, but they're not married to the Messiah. They're not married to God the Father. They are married to paganism, to Satan, really. Israel is not going to be wed to God until the second coming. That's when the nation of Israel, the saved, redeemed Israelites, are brought into the new covenant. Prior to that point, the nation of Israel is as pagan and Babylonianism as any other nation on earth. Israel is part of the Babylon system. And so who is the spouse of the harlot? I think it's the devil. When I went to Australia, did I have shrimp on the Barbie? No, but I did have burgers on the Barbie. I had some great shrimp in a restaurant. And I had some other very amazing food. I had a lamb that was crazy good. I had a lamb burger that was crazy good. And I had the food in Australia is actually pretty good. I find that I enjoy Australian bread the way I enjoy European bread. Doesn't have as much garbage in it as American bread. Do I think that we will see an uprising or a Mogadishu style scenario here in America due to socialism and the rise of Islam? That's a great question. I think we're going to see a few of these things try and take off. But folks, I suspect that what we're going to see in the next year, next 2 years, with President Trump and this administration, is we're going to see a crackdown on the Somali garbage in Minnesota. We're going to see a crackdown on the garbage in California and a crackdown on the garbage in New York. I think we're going to see more federal troops deployed to different places in the nation that need it. I think Trump is going to address the fraud. I think Trump is going to address fundamentalist Islam here in the country. And I think there's going to be a heavy price to pay. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these nutcase Islamicists find out that they're on the wrong end of a bunch of angry men, black, white, and Hispanic, who hate that libtard garbage, and they pay the fiddler. on the street. So um, I personally think we're going to see problems, but I think those problems are going to be addressed. Do you think Jeremiah 49:37 through 38 could be a future prophecy in which there's a war in Iran? Well, again, um, I'm not convinced myself that the Elam prophecies are future. I could be wrong, but I read the arguments for this, and I just don't see a substantive argument that's strong enough. I look at those arguments and I say, well, wait a minute. There's historical evidence that Elam actually got destroyed. Uh, and the pieces, the fragmented pieces, were absorbed into the Medo-Persian Empire. It's just a historical fact. So if Elam was intended by God to be a future prophecy, then it will play out in the future. But if Elam was a historical prophecy that's historically fulfilled, then it's not going to play into the future. That doesn't mean that what we see in Iran doesn't have a prophetic significance. What we see with Iran right now has great prophetic significance because it's setting up the stage for Ezekiel 38 and 39. It's setting up the stage um, for Israel to be in a place of relative freedom and peace prior to Ezekiel 38 and 39. Well, let's read Ezekiel 49 because we got a couple questions in a row here on 30 verses 37 and 38. So let's just read this. So I'm going to open up my eSword here. Well, let me check this text just in case it has to do. Nope, doesn't have. Oh, someone's telling me my volume is in and out. Okay, so let me come back here. If my volume has been in and out, can you give me a thumbs down if you're having a problem with the volume going in and out? If it is, I can see if I can make an adjustment here and do something a little different. Okay, so let's go to Jeremiah 49. And I think it was 37 and 38 that they're asking questions about. So let's start in verse 35. Thus says the Lord of hosts, behold, I will break the bow of Elam, the foremost of their might. Against Elam I will bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven and scatter them towards all those winds. There shall be no nations where the outcasts of Elam will not go. I will cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies and before those who seek their life. I will bring disaster upon them, my fierce anger, says the Lord, and I will send the sword after them until I have consumed them. I will set my throne in Elam, and I will destroy from there the king and the princes, says the Lord. But it shall come to pass in the latter days, I will bring back the captives of Elam, says the Lord. So we obviously have in verse 39. Okay, I do have a few thumbs down here. So other people are having problems with the volume. Let me see if I can just turn my volume up. And maybe I should bring my microphone just a little bit closer to me here and see if this helps a bit. Sometimes if I have my microphone a little farther away so I can have my keyboard handy if I need it, it makes it a little bit more difficult. All right, so we definitely have in verse 39, the Lord's going to bring back the captives of Elam. Now that in and of itself, this doesn't tell us if these captives from Elam are like the Israelites, and some of them are before the time of Christ and some of them are after the time of Christ, but they're spread throughout the world. We do know that the Elamites were spread throughout the world as slaves in the history past. So we, verse 38 says, I will set my throne in Elam. and I will destroy from there the king and the princes. So the question we face here, obviously it has to be literal. But in what is this literal in the sense this is the Lord's throne, his kingdom throne at the beginning of the millennium? That doesn't quite make sense to me, because at that time he's not really focused merely on the kings and princes in Elam. He's focused on all the kings and princes from the whole globe. Now, there was a time when he set his providential throne in Elam, not his kingdom throne, his providential throne. And he destroyed the king and the princes. And he did this in the days of the Medo-Persian, when they dealt with Elam. That's how I would handle that. Okay, let me bring this down. Is there any improvement? Okay, I see here there's any improvement in the sound, so thank you for that. All right. In the tribulation, they throw gold and silver in the streets because a loaf of bread is a day's wage and they are bitter. Do you not find it concerning that gold and silver are this high? Well, just based on my experience in dealing with the markets many, many moons ago, almost in another life, I long expected that gold and silver were going to go this high. You know, when I can remember when the Dow was what, 4,200 or whatever it was, and the NASDAQ was just barely over 1,000. And I knew there was a book back in the that I read in the early 2000s that it was an older book, and it said Dow 40,000, and that book was mocked. Is this ridiculed by Wall Street? And I read that book. I thought there's every reason why I should believe that the Dow is going to hit 40,000. First of all, the way they value stocks is changing considerably over the years as the price to earnings ratios just keep climbing. There's no objective reality between price to earnings and the price of a stock. And you also have inflation. So every year, stocks are going to go up merely on the basis of inflation. It looks like the stock is increasing in value, but its true value is increasing much slower than its pretend value, because the pretend value is based on inflation. I figured that gold, I'm not a bit surprised that gold is where it's at. I'm not a bit surprised that silver is where it's at. I was a bit surprised how long it took for it to finally start a steep curve upward. They were talking about silver heading for $100 20 years ago, and it didn't happen, and it didn't happen, and it didn't happen, and now it's happening. There was talk 20 years ago of gold going to $5,000, and it didn't happen, and it didn't happen, and now it's happening. Now, when I look at the passages that have gold and silver being thrown in the streets in the tribulation, I don't think this is during the tribulation. It's not in the second year, the third year, the fourth year, the fifth year, the sixth year. That is in the very day that the heavens open up, the signs in the heavens happen, and the Lord descends to earth. On that day, men finally realize, despite their hard-heartedness during the tribulation, that they have an almighty God in heaven to deal with. Prior to that time, they're living in the delusion, the great delusion of the Antichrist. They're living in the delusion of evolution. They're living in the delusion of that mankind was created in a synthetic way by beings of a higher race from another galaxy, or maybe from somewhere in our galaxy, and that we were seeded, we're spawned, we were engineered. They're living in this fake reality. And then when we have Armageddon come and the world is preparing for the alien invasion, and they get together like they do in the Hollywood movies to defend against the alien invasion, and you got all these macho men beating themselves in the chest because they're so brave and strong. And then
the zombies from heaven descend. But we're not zombies. We are the sons of the resurrection with eternal life intrinsically, in bodies that cannot be killed, wounded, destroyed, or injured, or maimed, or hurt in any way, shape, or form. And within 30 seconds of the time that we descend from heaven, these ungodly men realize what a mistake they made. They realize that this thing about alien beings coming down is a joke, that this is God manifest in the flesh coming down with his glorified army. And it's all over for them. And all of a sudden, every man on earth is looking for a hole to hide in, or they're trying to get rid of their gold and silver that they trusted in. This is like the teenager in his bedroom when his mom comes home early from work and he's trying to hide his marijuana and his Playboy magazines. This is what these men are doing on this judgment day. It's too late. You're already caught red-handed and you're in deep doo-doo. And do I find it concerning that gold and silver are this high? It doesn't concern me at all. I could care less. Let gold go up. You know there's mega players, institutional players associated with the deep state who are making a boatload of money as gold climbs. They spent a decade or two gathering gold until it became so scarce that the price started to skyrocket as the smaller players jump in to ride it to all-time highs. And then you can rest assured that these institutional gorilla-sized players are going to they're probably starting to short gold and silver right now, and they're going to make a boatload of money on the way down. And when it hits bottom again and finds a bottom, probably somewhere's north of $1,500, maybe north of $2,000, they'll start buying up again. And it's the average individual investor that gets taken to the cleaners, and the institutional investors and the deep state consolidate their financial strength even more. I expect the same thing to happen with Bitcoin and all these other blockchain currencies. The institutional players are going to drive them up to all-time, to just skyrocketing heights, and then short them and make a boatload of money on the way down. Okay, now someone says my volume went very loud, and oh, that must be earlier, huh? Because that was from 840. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this volume, but okay, it says it's a tad too loud, so let me turn it down. Does that help a little bit? How's this volume now? Or maybe I just need to talk a little quieter. You know, you got me excited talking about this stuff, so it's all your fault. All right. If the regime changes in Iran, particularly if Pahlavi returns, how does that affect Ezekiel 38? Do you think it'll move the tribulation further by years? Well, the tribulation is not going to move. It is set in concrete. The day of the rapture is set in concrete. The place of the tribulation is set in concrete. The day of the second coming is set in concrete. If the second coming is set in concrete and can't be moved, the tribulation can't be moved. The tribulation can't be moved. The pre-trib rapture can't be moved. I think all three times are set in concrete. Now, our perception of where we think the rapture is going to happen and where we think the tribulation is going to start, that is going to be moved. So it's just our perception that has to get moved, but nothing is going to get moved in reality. I think there is a pretty good chance, but not a guarantee, that there will be a regime change in Iran. If there is a regime change in Iran, I think it's just as likely that moderates will take power, religious moderates who will allow a more secular government, rather than Pahlavi returning as the Shah, maybe they will allow him to return in a different governmental format, more like a secular government, where he's more in the office of president, and the president will have strength, more power in Iran than they have right now, because right now the Ayatollah has more power than the president, and it's the religious power that controls the army. You know, Iran right now is the only nation on earth where the head of state does not control the military. The military in Iran is controlled by the religious head. But I think there will be a regime change, not positive, but I think there will be one. And I think it's just going to make, it's not going to slow down Ezekiel 38 or 39, but it's going to change the climate of Ezekiel 38 and 39. Because when we move to Ezekiel 38 and 39, I think we have national governments, national secular governments that are focused on Israel in Ezekiel 38 and 39. There's still going to be a lot of religious fervor there, but I don't think it's going to be a religious Iran. I think it'll be a political Iran that has religion. I don't think it's going to be this religious, fanatical, radical sects, but these radical groups brought into a political entity, like Syria gathered all these the groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and brought them together into one military, kind of unified them, bring more order, more rank, more strength, more resilience. Bad for Israel, good for them. Any guesses as to what the hook is that draws Gog and Magog to attack? Wealth, anti-Semitism, rapture, collapse of the West, the land? Well, I suspect there's likely several things. There's a wealth of minerals in the area. There's a wealth of natural gas and oil in the area. There is a technology hub that's there that's might be worth more than all the natural gas and oil and minerals. You also have just this growing hatred for Zionism, for Israel, for the Jews. I think all of these are going to play parts in this, as well as a one-upmanship with the West. So basically, Gog and Magog is going to be the anti-Roman Empire last hurrah. They're going to gather all these nations that are opposed to Israel and this great Satan conglomeration that's defending Israel. They're going to come together in such a way that Israel's going to be alone. The West is going to just let this thing play out. And God is going to come to Israel's defense and absolutely demolish the Gog and Magog juggernaut. And so this in-your-face attitude, this rejection of God's ordained government in the Middle East, which is the Roman Empire, will be brought to an end, and then the Roman Empire will step into the vacuum and take over. Okay, why was Italy, Portugal, Hungary, and Spain not part of the peace group? Well, I know that Spain was not part of the peace group, and I know that many European nations are saying no at this point. I wasn't aware that Hungary wasn't part of it. I guess somewhere I thought I'd read that Hungary was part of it, but I'll have to go back and look at that. The main reason that many of these European nations are saying no is a lot of them are saying, if Palestine's not in the picture, then we don't want to be in the picture. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Okay, Soothkeep, have you seen that the Saudi prince's name equals 666? Just curious if you've looked into it. Many clues into Saudi Arabia with the marked beast, Islam, etc. Yeah, well, if you can play those number games, you're going to find that there's dozens of world leaders in the last 100 years that had Antichrist symbolism, deep state symbolism, Illuminati symbolism, that their names added up to 666 in Greek or Hebrew. They're a dime a dozen. I put zero stock in any of these theories. It's not that I don't believe that a man's not going to come up someday with 666 in his name. But don't waste your time looking for 666, folks, until you're in glory, in your luxury in heaven, watching prophetic updates on big screen TV while you drink your Heaven Bucks coffee. Because it's when you're up there that after we're up there is when the Antichrist is going to be revealed. And then you'll be able to sit down and you're going to be able to add his name up and say, yep, he ticks off all the boxes in the book of Revelation. He ticks off all the boxes in Daniel. It's not a bunch of speculation. This is objective fact. It's objective reality. The first seal's open. The Antichrist rides forth. He ticks the boxes, and his name comes up to 666. And I don't know. I'm suspecting it's going to come up to 666 in Greek, not necessarily in Hebrew, because it's in Greek. It's what the New Testament is written in. But I personally do not think that the Antichrist is going to be Muslim. I don't think he's going to be Saudi Arabian. I don't think he's going to be Syrian. I don't think he's going to be Iraqi. I don't think he's going to be Iranian. I don't believe any of the Muslim Antichrist theories myself. The Antichrist, folks, is going to oppose all that is called God or honored or revered. Not everything but the moon god, not everything but Allah. All gods. Allah, Elohim, Jehovah, God in English, Theos in Greek, everything that's called God, regarded as God, with a big G or a little g, is going to be opposed. The Antichrist is going to be a humanistic, atheistic, evolutionary libtard with a conservative streak. He's going to mix libertarianism and liberalism on the moral issues with conservatism and popularism on the military and the economy. And it's going to come in the spirit of Marxism. It's going to be democratic socialism. You know, years ago, Midnight Call put out a book, and the title was something along the lines of democracy is going to elect the Antichrist. And I think that they were spot on. But personally, I just don't see a Muslim Antichrist at all. Now, you'll see Antichrist numerology all over the world. You're going to see Antichrist numerology and Illuminati signs and symbols, big names in America, big names in Europe from the last few centuries, from the present day. You're going to see it with Hitler's Germany. You're going to see it in Russia. You're going to see it in Islam. That's because they're all Babylonian and they all have the same mystical nonsense in them. Do I think that Jared Kushner could be the Antichrist? Yes, Jared Kushner is on my short list of 200 people that are legitimate Antichrist candidates. Time is going to tell, folks. Trying to figure out who the Antichrist is really, in some ways, I think, almost a waste of time. Is the river described in Ezekiel 47 the same river in Revelation 22? Well, we have the river of life in Revelation 22. And let's go to Ezekiel 47. And I believe that that is the river that's associated with the temple. Yes, that's the river associated with the temple. And I'm going to say, put it this way. They're the same in spirit. They're not the same in essence. The river that flows out from under the temple in Ezekiel 47 is the millennial river of living water that flows out from under the throne. And some of it, according to some prophetic passages, goes to the Mediterranean, and some to the Dead Sea. It brings life to the Dead Sea. The river in Revelation 22 is in New Jerusalem. And so they're different rivers. They're both rivers of living water. The river in Ezekiel 47 is associated with the Lord, the Messiah's throne in Jerusalem. The river in Revelation 22 is associated with New Jerusalem. Luke 21:28. When you see these things begin to come to pass, then look up. Is this verse a pre-trib verse or the second coming of Jesus with the saints verse? Technically, Luke 21:28, when you see these, and the equivalent in Matthew, when you see these things come to pass, look up, for your redemption draws nigh. This is technically talking about events you can see happening during the tribulation, and that these people will be looking for the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. But the principle of looking also applies to the church age. They're looking at the tribulation unfolding. We take the same principle and we're looking at the stage setting for the tribulation. So just like they're looking for signs during the tribulation that points to their blessing at the second coming, we're looking for the stage setting of the tribulation, because that stage setting points to our pre-trib rapture blessing. So you can take the principles, or the principle of looking from this verse, and apply it to the rapture, but technically it's applying to the second coming. Is the church, the bride, and the body the same? The church of Jesus Christ, the bride of Jesus Christ, and the body of Jesus Christ are the same. The body and the bride are the same. If the 10 kings reign 1 hour with the Antichrist, can there be forming now? Well, we certainly can be seeing the underpinnings of that system coming together right now. I think that's a lot of the geopolitical situation that's coming to play right now in the world. I think we're seeing this stuff form before our very eyes. Now, we're seeing the early aspects of it. There's literally a time when 10 kings will give their power to the Antichrist, and the Antichrist will in turn give his power and authority to them. We don't see that right now, but we do see events and geopolitical happenings that are taking us in that direction. Will we see the great white throne judgment? I absolutely believe we will. We are the bride of Christ. If Christ is going to be there, we are going to be there. All the angels will be there. All the saints will be there. Now it says, a lot of people don't want to see this. Folks, hell is an ugly thought. But I can tell you right now, in your resurrection state, when your mind is renewed completely and your heart is renewed completely, you will be on exactly the same page as Jesus. And when he casts people into hell, whether your enemies or your friends or your family, you won't flinch. You will be just as indignant and sense the same honor and vindication that Jesus does. So they're going into hell because of their unbelief. And you are going to see before that day how absolutely iniquitously evil unbelief is. Unbelief is the most wicked sin in the universe. It is more wicked than homosexuality or murder by a long shot. Things like homosexuality and perversion and other kinds of sin, murder, These are all manifestations of unbelief. They don't have a life of their own. All right. And yes, I do believe we'll see them thrown into hell. Ezekiel 66 has us during the kingdom. Every human being on planet Earth is going to look into hell and see the souls of those who were cast into hell where their worm dieth not. This is part of the hellfire and brimstone preaching in the kingdom. The kingdom is earthly religion. Will we see Satan thrown in the lake of fire? We absolutely will, and that will be accompanied by one of the biggest fireworks displays in the history of the world. And how do I know that? I don't. It's just a guess on my part. I can't imagine not celebrating. All right. So now we have, the last point says, questions are closed. I got them all. So folks, it's pretty amazing. We just went 2 hours and 5 minutes. We had an hour and 10 minutes of Q&A. My voice did not die, though I do need to take another drink. All right. So I got a new favorite drink for the evening. I take a lemon-flavored electrolyte drink mix, and I add a little packet that's one whole lemon turned into lemon powder, and then I add about half a teaspoon of honey, and then I add about a quarter teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and I mix it all together with piping hot water, and it does wonders for my throat. I just love it. But anyway, it's my new favorite evening drink, and it's my favorite drink for when I get a preacher talk for a long time. So I thank everyone for showing up tonight. We had a great turnout. I thank my moderators for once again doing an absolutely outstanding job. I do ask you to continue to pray for this ministry. Right now I'm trying to juggle getting the housework done, getting the 501c3 set up, getting my studio set up. It just seems like we never have quite enough time to get everything done. It's been extremely complicated. And on top of that, I got to keep my writing and my YouTube ministry going. So hold me up in your prayers. And I'm doing a ton of traveling, probably doing too much traveling, but I hate to say no when people want me to come and open up the word to them. So thank you all for showing up. Keep looking up, folks. Keep yourself encouraged. Keep in the word. Stand strong on the plain statements of Scripture and refuse to budge on them for anybody. But when it comes to your discernment of dot connecting, for connecting the Word of God with potential prophecy fulfillments in our present, just hold those things lightly and loosely. And just continue to look for more information to take you one way or the other. Anyways, I love you all. Take care. God bless, and we'll see you next time.